In a quiet suburb of Atlanta, Georgia, a woman named Nora found herself alone in her home. It had been 5 years since she lost her husband, and the silence of the house often felt overwhelming. To fill the void, she decided to make use of the orange trees in her backyard, which bore fruit abundantly each year. Maybe I should sell them, she thought to herself, feeling a spark of purpose. Setting up a small table in front of her house, she arranged the oranges neatly and crafted a sign from a piece of cardboard. "My oranges are small, but they taste like honey. $2 a pound," it read. As neighbors passed by, they smiled and teased her about starting a little business. Nora didn't mind, she needed something to keep her busy, or she feared she would go mad within the 4 walls of her home. One afternoon, an elderly man approached her stand. He was tall and dressed neatly in a light blue button-up shirt and khaki pants, a warm smile gracing his face. "Hello," he said, his voice friendly. "Hi there," Nora replied, returning his smile. "Your oranges are really small," he chuckled. "But I guarantee they taste like honey," she countered playfully. "In that case, I'll take a pound," he said. As she weighed the oranges and placed them in a bag, he introduced himself. "I'm Henry," he said, extending a hand. "Nora," she replied, shaking his warm hand. There was something comforting about his touch. The next day, Henry returned, looking a bit more polished, wearing a crisp white shirt and dark jeans. "Good morning, Nora," he greeted her. "Good morning," she replied, feeling a flutter in her chest. "These oranges are amazing. I even recommended them to my neighbors," he added, causing her cheeks to flush with pride. "Thank you so much," she said, genuinely touched. "Can I get 2 pounds today?" he asked. "Of course," she replied, quickly weighing the fruit. As she bagged the oranges, he asked, "Do you live alone?" "Yes," she admitted. "My husband passed away 5 years ago." "I'm sorry to hear that," he said, his voice filled with sincere sympathy. "Thank you." "Are you alone as well?" she inquired. "Yes, I lost my wife a year ago," he replied softly. Their eyes met for a moment, and an unspoken understanding passed between them. Both were navigating the same lonely path. "Would you like some tea?" Nora asked, surprising herself with her boldness. "I would love that," he said, his eyes lighting up. They moved to her garden, where she prepared tea in an old-fashioned kettle. As they sat at a small table surrounded by blooming flowers, Henry looked around and said, "This place is lovely." "My husband adored it here," she replied, a hint of nostalgia in her voice. Henry nodded, understanding the weight of her words. They talked for hours, sharing stories and laughter. He was charming and kind, and Nora felt a warmth in her heart that she hadn't experienced in years. From that day on, Henry made it a habit to visit her daily. Sometimes he would buy oranges, but other times he simply came to enjoy her company over tea. Their friendship blossomed, and Nora found herself looking forward to his visits. "It's so nice to chat with you," he would say, and she would respond, "It's the same for me." One day, he arrived and said, "I think I'll skip the oranges today. I just wanted to see you." His words filled her with joy. "That makes me very happy," she replied, preparing tea once again. As they sat in her garden, he looked at her thoughtfully and said, "You know, my days have been brighter since I met you." Nora felt her heart race at his admission, a warmth spreading through her. She smiled, realizing that perhaps they were both finding solace in each other's company. Nora woke up each morning with a newfound purpose. The sun streamed through her kitchen window, illuminating the small space filled with the scent of fresh coffee. She had begun to feel a spark of joy she thought had long faded. It was all because of Henry, her neighbor, who had become a comforting presence in her life. "Really?" Henry asked one day, his eyes brightening with curiosity. "You're excited to see me?" "Yes," she replied boldly, her heart racing. "I can't wait to see you." They shared a long gaze, a moment suspended in time, before he reached out and took her hand. His touch was warm and gentle. "Nora," he said softly. "Yes," she replied, feeling a rush of emotion. "It's wonderful being with you," he admitted, his voice thick with sincerity. Tears welled in her eyes at his words. "I feel the same way," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. As the days passed, their bond deepened. They were no longer just neighbors, they had become something much more special. They met daily, sometimes in her garden, sometimes in his cozy living room, sharing cups of tea and laughter. Henry was a kind man, always bringing small gifts like fresh pastries or homemade soup. "You didn't have to go through all this trouble," he would say, his eyes twinkling with appreciation as they shared meals together. It felt as if they had known each other for years, the ease of their companionship wrapping around them like a warm blanket. One afternoon, as they sat in her garden surrounded by blooming roses, Henry turned to her with a serious expression. "Nora," he began, "I feel like I'm growing closer to you every day." He hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "I mean, I'm becoming more attached to you," he confessed, his honesty warming her heart. "I feel the same way," she admitted, a smile breaking through her initial surprise. "I haven't felt this way in a long time." He took her hand again, this time holding it longer, his fingers intertwining with hers. "Is this real?" she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "It feels very real," he replied, his gaze steady and reassuring. That day, for the first time, she called him Henry instead of just neighbor. The name rolled off her tongue like a sweet melody. "Henry," she said, savoring the sound. Hearing her name from his lips felt equally special. "I think I'm starting to love you," she confessed, her breath catching in her throat. "I'm breathless," he replied, his eyes widening in surprise. "I'm 62, but it feels like I'm experiencing my first love." "I love you too, Henry," she said, and they embraced for the first time. It was a peaceful hug, filled with warmth and tenderness. They took their time, savoring the moment, feeling each other's presence. "It's beautiful," she murmured, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "Yes, it is," he replied softly. "Henry," she said, looking up at him, "would you kiss me?" He gazed at her for a long moment, as if searching her eyes for something. Then he leaned in, brushing his lips against hers in a soft, gentle kiss. It was sweet and slow, a tender connection shared between two souls who had found each other later in life. "I've lived 62 years, she said, her voice filled with wonder. "But I've never felt this happy." "I'm 65, he replied, "and this is the happiest moment of my life." They kissed again, lingering a little longer this time, their hands finding their way to each other's shoulders and waist, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they were forging. As the days turned into weeks, their neighbors began to notice the change in their dynamic. Whispers floated through the community, "Did Nora find a boyfriend?" But for Nora and Henry, it was more than just a romance, it was a rediscovery of joy, companionship, and love in the twilight of their lives. Nora sat on her porch, the warm sun casting a golden hue over the neighborhood in Maplewood, New Jersey. She watched the world go by, her mind drifting to the recent conversations she'd had with Henry. The whispers of the neighbors didn't bother her, they were happy for her, or so she hoped. Her daughter, Emily, had called from New York City, concern lacing her voice. "Mom, I heard you're seeing someone." "Who is this guy?" "It's Henry, our neighbor," Nora replied, trying to keep her tone light. "Seriously?" You're dating a neighbor? Emily sounded incredulous. Yes, I am. And I'm quite happy about it, Nora said, her heart racing slightly. Mom, you're 62, Emily said, her voice softening. I just want to make sure you're okay. Why can't older people find love? Nora countered, a hint of frustration creeping into her voice. I'm very happy, Emily. Your father would have wanted this for me. After a brief pause, Emily finally said, okay, as long as you're sure. I'll be happy for you. Nora hung up the phone feeling a mix of relief and sadness. When Henry arrived later that day, he noticed her mood. What's wrong? He asked, concern etched on his face. My daughter doesn't understand, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Don't let it get to you, Henry said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. In time, she'll see how happy we are. That's what matters. Nora nodded, feeling comforted by his words. You're right. I'm not going to live my life based on what others think. I'm 62, and I can make my own decisions. A month passed, and their bond deepened. One sunny afternoon, as they sat together in her garden, Henry turned to her with a serious expression. Nora, will you marry me? The question caught her off guard. Really? She asked, her heart racing. Yes, I want us to be together officially, he said, his eyes earnest. Nora hesitated for a moment, thinking of her children. But what about the kids? They'll adjust. Our happiness is what's important, he reassured her. With a smile breaking across her face, she finally said, yes, I'll marry you. Henry's face lit up with joy. They embraced tightly, the warmth between them palpable. Thank you, he whispered. No, thank you for bringing joy back into my life, she replied. That evening, Nora called Emily again. I have news, she said, her heart pounding. Mom, what is it? Emily asked, a hint of apprehension in her voice. I'm getting married, Nora announced, her voice steady. Are you serious? Emily exclaimed. Very serious. I'm happy, and I want you to be happy for me. After a moment of silence, Emily finally said, if you're sure, then I'm happy for you. I'll come to the wedding. Nora felt a wave of relief wash over her. Thank you, sweetheart. Your support means everything. Preparations for the wedding began 2 weeks later. Nora was filled with excitement and nervousness. She was getting married again at her age, and the thought thrilled her. The wedding day arrived, bright and beautiful. They opted for a small ceremony with just their children and a few close neighbors. Nora wore a lovely blue dress that flowed gracefully around her, while Henry looked dapper in a tailored suit. I do, she said, her voice filled with joy as she looked into Henry's eyes. I do, he replied, his smile radiant. The officiant declared them husband and wife, and as applause erupted around them, they shared their first kiss as a married couple. Welcome to our home, Nora said as they stepped into her house together, hand in hand. Yes, our home, Henry echoed, his eyes sparkling with happiness. Their first night together was peaceful. They lay side by side, the soft glow of the moonlight filtering through the curtains. Nora, Henry said softly. Yes, Henry, she replied, turning to face him. I'm so happy, he said, squeezing her hand gently. Me too, she whispered back, feeling a warmth spread through her. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, he confessed. Me too, she said, her heart swelling with love. They shared a tender kiss, the promise of a beautiful future ahead of them. Nora woke the next morning to the soft rays of sunlight streaming through the window. She turned to see Henry beside her, a gentle smile on his face. "Good morning, my love," he said, his voice warm and inviting. "Good morning, handsome," she replied, her heart fluttering at the sight of him. It felt strange yet beautiful to be waking up next to someone she loved so deeply at the age of 62. The first few months of their marriage had been nothing short of magical. Every morning, they prepared breakfast together, sharing laughter and stories as they cooked. "What do you want to do today, Nora?" Henry would ask, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Everything is beautiful with you," she would respond, her heart full. They continued their tradition of selling oranges at the local farmers' market, but now they did it as a team. "Our oranges may be small, but they taste like honey," they would shout together, drawing smiles from their neighbors. Their community was thrilled for them. "What a lovely couple you two make," the neighbors would exclaim, and they would graciously thank them, feeling the warmth of their support. One day, a young couple approached their stall, beaming with excitement. "We just got married," they announced. "Congratulations!" Nora and Henry replied in unison. "We want to be like you too," the young woman said, her eyes shining with admiration. "That means a lot to us," Henry said, glancing at Nora. "Just love each other," he advised. "Age doesn't matter, love is what counts." In the evenings, they would cuddle on the couch, watching their favorite shows. "Henry," Nora would say, looking into his eyes. "Yes, my dear," he would respond, his voice filled with affection. "I feel so lucky," she would confess, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Why's that?" he would ask, genuinely curious. "Because I found you," she would say, and he would smile, saying, "I'm the lucky one. You're my everything." His words warmed her heart every time. A year later, they decided to plant new orange trees in their backyard. "Let's grow them together," Henry suggested, and Nora agreed, thrilled at the idea. Every day, they would water the young trees, nurturing them with love. "Look, Nora!" Henry exclaimed one day, pointing at the blossoming flowers on the trees. "They're beautiful," she said, her eyes lighting up. "Just like our love. Old, but still blooming," she added, and he chuckled, appreciating her analogy. Their daughter visited one afternoon with her young daughter. "Mom, you look so happy," she remarked, noticing the glow on Nora's face. "I am, sweetheart," Nora replied, her smile broadening. "I'm glad you married Uncle Henry," her daughter said, and Nora nodded, feeling the same sentiment. Meanwhile, their granddaughter ran around the garden, her laughter filling the air. "Grandma, the oranges are so small," she exclaimed, her hands on her hips. "But they taste like honey." Nora laughed, recalling their favorite saying. "Why?" the little girl asked, her curiosity piqued. "Because we grew them with love," Nora explained, glancing at Henry. That evening, Henry looked at Nora and said, "We're a real family now." "Yes," she agreed, feeling the weight of their shared life. "You, me, the kids, and the grandkids. We're all in this together." They embraced, holding each other tightly. "Growing old with you is wonderful," she said, smiling at him. "You're getting more beautiful every day," he replied, making her laugh. The second year of their marriage brought a challenge when Nora faced a minor health issue that required a hospital stay. Henry never left her side. "Nora, I'm right here," he reassured her, holding her hand tightly. "I know, my love," she said, feeling comforted by his presence. "I'm scared," he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. "Don't be," she whispered, squeezing his hand. "I'll get better. I want to spend many more years with you." Their bond was stronger than ever, and together they faced whatever life threw their way, knowing that their love would always guide them through. Nora sat on the porch of their quaint home in Florida, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink hues. She had just turned 65, and her husband, Henry, was 68. They had been married for 3 years now, and every morning, they greeted each other with a warm "Good morning, my love," and every night they whispered "Good night, darling," before drifting off to sleep. Their orange grove had flourished, the trees heavy with fruit that was small but sweet, like honey. "Our oranges may be little, but they taste like sunshine," they would shout together, their laughter echoing through the grove. People came not just for the oranges anymore, they came to hear their story. "How did you two meet?" curious visitors would ask, eyes wide with interest. "While selling oranges," Nora would reply with a chuckle. "He came as a customer, and then he started coming every day." "Oranges were just the excuse," Henry would add, his eyes twinkling. "I was after the real deal." They would share a knowing smile, a spark of the same excitement they felt on that first day. As they sat together, the sun dipping below the horizon, Henry turned to Nora. "Do you remember the day we met?" he asked, his voice softening. "Yes," she replied, her heart swelling with nostalgia. "That day changed my life." "Mine too," he said, taking her hand in his. "You wrote that our oranges were small but tasted like honey." "Yes," she agreed, "and our love is just like that, maybe not flashy, but oh, so sweet." "Exactly," he said, leaning in closer. They shared a gentle kiss, the warmth of their connection palpable even after all this time. They had learned to cherish each day together, grateful for the simple joys. "We'll be more careful now," Henry said after Nora had recovered from a minor health scare. "You're my everything," he added, his voice steady. "And you're mine," she replied, the sincerity in her eyes reflecting their deep bond. From that moment on, they made it a point to appreciate each sunrise and sunset, reminding each other how lucky they were to be together. Neighbors often remarked, "You two are such an example of love." They would smile, knowing that age was no barrier to affection. "Love knows no age," they would say, their hearts young despite the years. One day, a young woman approached them, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Can I share your story?" she asked eagerly. "Of course," Nora replied, her heart swelling with pride. "Let people know that love has no age." The video went viral, and soon Nora became known as Orange Auntie, her story inspiring many. As they celebrated their 3rd anniversary, Nora reflected on how their love had only grown stronger. "We may be getting older, but our love never ages," she told Henry, who nodded in agreement. "Every day with you is a blessing," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "Even at 65, my heart feels 20, she replied, her eyes sparkling with joy. "Because love doesn't age, it rejuvenates," he said, pulling her close. As they sat in their grove, surrounded by the sweet scent of oranges, they knew that their story was just beginning. Love, they realized, was timeless. Dear viewers, Nora would say in her videos, love has no age. At 60, 70, or 80, one can love and be loved. What matters is the youth of the heart. And with that, they continued to share their journey, reminding everyone that age is just a number, but love is infinite. Subscribe to the channel, many more